Okay, when you picture the 1950s, what pops into your head? I'm guessing it's something in black and white, right? Perfect suburbs, perfect families. It all feels a little too simple. Well, what if I told you that entire image was basically a carefully constructed myth? We're about to pull back the curtain on the real 1950s, an era of explosive color, rebellion, and a tech revolution that pretty much laid the groundwork for the world we live in today. Let's get into it. All right, so here we go. This is the 1950s we all think we know. A classic, grainy, black and white shot of Chicago's legendary Beehive Lounge. It feels like something you'd see behind glass in a museum, doesn't it? Something locked away in the past. This is the official story. This is the myth.
But was it really so black and white? Seriously, was the entire decade just shades of gray? We started digging, and what we found was a completely different world, just buzzing with color, totally hidden from that official narrative.
And you know, our first big clue was hiding in plain sight, the clothes. Yeah, sure, the corporate world was sticking to its grays and its blues, but everywhere else, men's fashion was having a full-on Technicolor moment. We are talking about ads for bright yellow shirts, bow ties in every color of the rainbow. This wasn't just some passing trend, it was a quiet rebellion.
And get this, they actually had a name for it, Peacock Fashion. How great is that? Pastels were officially out. This was all about big, bold, in-your-face colors, heavy textures like tweed, and massive patterns, especially for weekend wear. The black and white world was over. The 50s were going full color.
And this whole explosion of color, it wasn't just about looking good. It was a signal. In the 50s, your clothes were basically a code. They were a uniform that told everyone which side of the cultural divide you were on, the buttoned-down corporate world or the more rebellious casual frontier. On one side, you have this guy, the man in the gray flannel suit. And he wasn't just a character from a novel, he was a cultural icon. That suit was the uniform of corporate America. It just screamed success, conformity, and I'm buying into the American dream if I play by the rules.
And make no mistake, it was absolutely a uniform. The rules came straight from the Ivy League stylebook, and the clothes came from legendary brands like J. Press and Brooks Brothers. You had the specific sack jacket, the Oxford cloth button-down, the unpleated trousers. The whole look was designed to say, I'm successful, but I'm not flashy about it.
But then you go 3,000 miles away and a totally different fashion universe is taking shape. While New York was all about charcoal gray, the West Coast was inventing California casual. Forget conformity. This was all about comfort. Brands like White Stag and Jansen were selling this dream of sunshine and leisure. And the key item wasn't a stuffy suit, it was a pair of capri pants. Okay, but back in the cities, a third tribe was emerging. And they looked at the gray flannel suits and the sunny California sportswear and just said, no thanks. In the smoky cafes and the jazz clubs, a real counterculture was brewing.
And what's so fascinating is the philosophy behind this look. For the Beats, writers like Jack Kerouac, it was all about anti-fashion. Their clothes were purely functional. Old work jackets, worn-out jeans. This wasn't a style statement. It was a political one. It was all about rejecting materialism and just avoiding any kind of fuss.
So you've got these competing social codes, all these different tribes forming at the exact same time. But what was fueling this massive cultural shift? Well, the answer, as it so often is, was technology. A technological earthquake was happening, and you could say the 50s were basically the beta test for the modern world.
Okay, get ready for this. $1,000 in 1954. That's what it would cost you to bring home the brand new RCA CT-100, the very first mass-produced color television. And just to put that into perspective for you,
That's right, $1,000. For a TV, that was about half the price of a new car. This thing was an absolute beast, the most complex piece of consumer electronics ever made at the time, powered by 36 huge, power-guzzling vacuum tubes. This was the ultimate status symbol. It was the Tesla of its day. But while the TV was this giant, expensive piece of furniture, a tiny little invention was about to change the world. Meet the transistor. This little thing was a complete game changer. It replaced those huge, hot vacuum tubes and, for the first time ever, made electronics portable.
And this is not an exaggeration. The first commercial transistor radio, the Regency TR-1, was the smartphone of its day. It was the very first time you could untether media from the family living room and carry it around with you in your pocket.
And that one shift, portability, changed everything. This quote just nails it. For the first time, teenagers had a private line to a world their parents didn't understand.
they could tune into this new, dangerous music called rock and roll. This little box basically created youth culture as we know it.
So what was that soundtrack? Well, a lot of it was being forged in the jazz clubs and recording studios of one city in particular, Chicago. I mean, forget New York, forget LA. In the 50s, Chicago was the undisputed king of modern jazz. You had the Blue Note, where big bands like Duke Ellington's held court, you had the Southern Lounge, where you could catch a young Nina Simone, and you had the Beehive, which was basically the temple of bebop.
And these weren't just local spots. These were cathedrals of sound. We're talking about the places where legends like Charlie Parker, Max Roach, and Miles Davis were regulars, literally shaping the future of music night after night. But alongside these established clubs, something new and gritty was being born. And the origin story is incredible. It started in the shipping department of a stationery store.
Yeah, this incredible story comes from a member of the Ramsey Lewis Trio. They got a tip about an audition with the Chess Brothers, who ran this gritty little blues label called Chess Records. The brothers wanted to break into jazz, and that one meeting in the back of a stationery store gave birth to the legendary Argo and Cadet labels and a whole new sound for the city.
So let's zoom out. What does all of this mean? The fashion, the technology, the music, when you put it all together, you see that the 1950s weren't about one thing. They were about this fundamental conflict, a battle for the soul of America. On one side, you have the suburban dream, perfected in places like Levittown. The whole idea was sameness and conformity. The hero was the man in the gray flannel suit, and the goal was a piece of the American dream. On the other side, you have the urban reality of places like Greenwich Village. Here the idea was personal exploration, and the heroes were the beat writers and the jazz hipsters. And their goal was to reject that entire business civilization the suburbs were built on.
Which leaves us with a final question. Do we remember the 1950s as that black and white photo of perfect conformity, or do we see it for what it truly was, the colorful, chaotic, and revolutionary decade that secretly built the foundations of our modern world?